Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, thanks for stopping by. Today we are going to be working with a 20-ounce straight tumbler from Tumbler Supply Store and this beautiful floral red and blue vinyl from AB Designs Co. and these beautiful matching glitters from Diamonds and Dust, Red Carpet, and Breezy. I pulled them out and it was like they were meant to go together because they are a perfect match. So the first thing I did was trim off all of the white edges on the vinyl. And then I'm deciding, I kind of had a game plan or an idea of what I wanted to do with this when I started, but I didn't have like a definite game plan. So I'm kind of also winging it at the same time. So my initial thought was I was going to put vinyl right in the middle, and then you'll see here that I kind of changed my mind. And my original plan was to just put like a thin strip, but I ended up cutting it wider because I wanted more of the flowers to show. And then I moved it down towards the bottom a little bit more when I applied the vinyl. So what I was first doing is measuring from the top to the bottom, and I marked where the exact middle was, and then I cut the vinyl, and then you'll see here I ended up moving it down like I said because I decided that I was going to ombre the glitters and I didn't want just a tiny little area. So I moved the vinyl down and then applied that with the hinge method like I always do. I just made sure I cut a little bit of the backing off. I made sure that it lined up, and then I just took my felt back squeegee and pushed it, and the backing came off and it applied the vinyl. And then when I got to the end, what I did was I trimmed it and I took my scissors and I kind of cut around the flowers. I didn't want just a straight line so that the flowers were cut off. So I kind of trimmed around the flowers to make it blend better, and it kind of seemed more seamless that way. So you'll see here, I'm just kind of trimming around the flowers, and then I laid it down, and then I also took my X-Acto knife and got more precise for trimming right around those flowers. It just gave it a much cleaner look, in my opinion. Once I had that all trimmed up, I took the other scraps of vinyl that I had, because I had a little strip from my original first skinny strip that I cut, and then I cut out some of the flowers because I'm going to be using those later after we glitter and epoxy. After that was all cut out, we are going to work on painting and glittering the rest of the tumbler. So I start off by using some painter's tape and just marked off the edges, or taped off the edges of the vinyl so we don't get any paint or anything on there. And for the bottom portion, I went in with some white chalk paint that I had. I loved using chalk paint because it dries really fast and it gives really good coverage. This is just one of those like small $1.98 bottles from Walmart. And don't mind my brush. I really need to get some new brushes because I am terrible about cleaning them lately and they are all getting hard. So I need to get on getting some new ones. So I just painted the bottom white, and then the top portion is going to be red and blue mixture, or kind of like a fade. I didn't want them to mix because I didn't really want them to turn purple. So I was just really careful, slapped on some red, and then cleaned off my brush, slapped on some blue. I barely blended them in the middle, just enough that they were touching, and so I didn't have such a hard line. And then I let all of this dry and got each color then got a second coat of paint before I then applied my Crystalac glitter glue and moved on to glittering. The white portion is getting this luster dust. It's fine flakes in the purple opal color. It's from Diamonds and Dust, and let me tell you, it is beautiful. I know it says purple, but up against these blue tones, it really picked up the opal-y of the blue, and it is gorgeous. Here for a second when I was applying it, I really questioned myself if I should have done both sections in this white, but I mean, I'm happy with the way it turned out. But it is beautiful, and I'm going to use this again. But let me tell you, it's very fine flakes and it does go everywhere, so be very careful with that. So I just applied that, made sure to get a good coverage on the bottom as well. And then after I applied all that, I just took it on this piece of printer paper and rolled it to just help it lay flat. I literally do that with all of my glitters now. When I apply it to the cup, I've just found that it really helps with it laying flat and reduces the amount of sanding that I end up having to do later on. So we just rolled that, make sure I like stamp it on the paper so it helps the bottom lay flat as well. And then we remove the tape immediately because I don't want the glue to dry to that tape, because then it makes it a mess later when you try to take it off. Then I'm going to immediately go into the same thing with the white and the red glitter, and I just applied a generous amount of Crystalac glitter glue. I mean, this stuff is great. It's not as thick as some of the other glitter glues I've been using, but I needed it to not be so thick because I didn't want it to dry very quickly. You could also use Mod Podge here. You could use epoxy for the epoxy method, but I just happen to have this right here on my desk, so that's what we're doing. But I didn't want it to dry fast because we're going to be doing a glitter ombre, and with that I go back and forth several times, so I don't want it to dry very quickly. So I started with the blue and I just went right around the rim. I went pretty heavy, and then I tilted the cup so that the blue was up towards me and the white bottom was towards the table, and it was like a 90-degree angle maybe. And then I shook the glitter, so I'm making it I'm aiming it towards where the blue glitter lands or ended right now, so that it can land right there but kind of also land into the red area. And it's a very light coat right now, so this is how you really build up that ombre between the glitter colors. So I'm just going to tap that off and then go in and do the same thing with the red. I start heavier right at the rim where that tape is, and then I'm going to tilt the cup so that the white is up towards me and the blue is down towards the table, and then I'm going to let that red fall into the blue, and then I'm just going to go back and forth. I usually do it about 3 to 4 times. I've done it more and sometimes I've done it less. It just depends if you're happy with that blend. You don't want a stark line. You do want that red to fall into the blue and the blue to fall into the red, because that's what gives it that ombre and that seamless, no line transition between the two colors. I know that was a longer clip of me glittering this tumbler, but I really wanted to share how I build up that glitter ombre just in case you're not very good at it. It just is slow and steady going back and forth, and it will become easier with practice. I promise you. So after that, I sprayed it with 2 coats of clear glossy Rust-Oleum spray paint, and then I went in with a generous coat of epoxy, and then after that was done, I sanded just a little bit on the top rim and the bottom rim. The base area didn't really need much sanding, so I skipped it for this step. And then I went in and applied this metallic silver vinyl on the edges of the vinyl, and then I did a thick line, a medium line, and then a very thin line just for some added elements to the design. And I'm still telling you, I know I mentioned this in a previous video, but even though I'm following the lines of the vinyl, I still swear my eyes play tricks on me, and I feel like the vinyl striping is never straight. I always feel like it's like a wobbly line. So please tell me I'm not alone, and I'm not the only one who feels that way. Even though I know it's straight, my eyes are telling me it's not. After that, I decided to skip doing another layer of epoxy, and I'm going to go ahead and add the flowers. And I kind of turned it around, and I wanted to not cover up the big group of flowers, so I just turned it until I found a good spot, and all I did was just lay down these flowers. And you can see here where I had originally cut that vinyl, I had to cut out the flower cluster and then cut out the other piece from the strip that I cut so that I could complete this flower. And in the end, I noticed the little line for where I pieced it together, but it's really not that noticeable. So anyways, I just applied that, and then I applied the other flowers and some of the little red leaves that I cut out. It's just, I felt like this just kind of brought the design from the vinyl up to the top of the cup, so it keeps your eye flowing from the top to the bottom, and the decal wording is going to go from the top to the bottom, so it kind of all flows together that way. Then after that was applied, I took a really long time to decide what I wanted this tumbler to say. I really wanted something that was different. I didn't want just a name or some random saying. So I really wanted to say something that was encouraging. So I decided on embrace the journey, because I feel that in my soul lately, I know that so many people are struggling, and it's just part of our journey in this life. So I thought it was very fitting. So I first cut it out of red, and then I did a silver offset, and I applied that on the tumbler, which I didn't show you, but it wasn't like, it didn't stand out enough. You couldn't really see it. So I peeled it off, and then I recut it in red, and I still did a silver offset, and then on the silver offset, I did a white offset. It's a very thin silver offset. You can barely even see it. I don't even know if you can tell in these pictures, but it's red, silver, and then white. That way it really stands out, and it brings all the colors of the design and the tumbler together in this decal as well. I put the red and the silver together first, and then I applied the white on the tumbler, because it's really hard to see when I'm laying any kind of decal on the white, because the backing of the white vinyl that I get from Hobby Lobby is also white, so I can never see it. So I applied the white on the tumbler, and then just applied the red and silver on top of that on the tumbler, held my breath as usual, and it lined up perfectly, thank goodness. Once I was done with that, then it was time for the last 2 coats of epoxy, and at first I thought it was missing something, so I took a paint marker and I drew on those flowers that we applied, and I hated it, so I wiped that off with some rubbing alcohol, and then I decided to just epoxy it and add a little bit of sparkle this way. So what I did was I took Waterfalls from Diamonds and Dust. It's not an opaque vinyl, it's very like translucent, opaly, color shifty vinyl, but it adds that little bit of sparkle without taking away from the design element. So I just poured some in the lid, took a little pinch on my fingers and just kind of rubbed my fingers together, so it just kind of sprinkled the glitter over, but didn't get too heavy-handed because I tend to be heavy-handed like that. And then I took Splatter from Diamonds and Dust as well, and it's a chunky red, and I did the same thing but less because I didn't want too much red. I didn't want it to take away from the design. Like I said, I just wanted to add a little bit extra, like a little surprise, I guess you could call it. But it's so pretty the way it just kind of adds some elements of that sparkle in there. After that, I got 2 more coats of epoxy to make sure all those chunky glitters were sealed in there, and it was all done. It turned out so pretty. It's, I know, a more simple design, but sometimes less is more, in my opinion. So I'm really happy with the way it came out. I'm really proud of this ombre, and that's it. I hope that I have inspired you. I hope that you love this video as much as I loved working on this tumbler, and I will, as usual, leave all of the information where to find me and all the products that I used and some discount codes down in the description box. This tumbler will be available on my website like usual, and I thank you again for being here, and I will see you next week, and that's it. Bye, y'all. I forgot, I did want to mention that I've been really vacillating with the idea of starting a mentorship group come January. So if you could leave me any thoughts on that down in the description box, I would greatly appreciate it. If you'd be interested, if it would even be something that you would consider, then I'd love to know your thoughts. So anyways, leave those down there in the comments, and I will see you next week. Bye, y'all.